Well, at this point in our journey here on Up the Irons Week, we are now 9 albums in. And what we've seen thus far has been a band that has kind of gone from the threshold of a great debut, a great groundwork to a fantastic and magnificent 1980s decade, only to come into the 1990s a little bit troubled, so to speak. No Prayer for the Dying could be seen as kind of the band's first album where fans were a little bit confused. Although, whenever you really listen to this album, it really doesn't exactly have all that much of a deviation from the 1980s sound. Some may just say that it's a little bit more commercialized. Not commercialized in the sense where you sort of saw the evolution of Metallica from And Justice for All to the Black Album, or similarly with Megadeth, with the transition from Rust in Peace to Countdown to Extinction, but just something that was really kind of off the radar of what the fans were kind of used to. It was an album that seemed subpar. It had a little bit more of the B-side throwaway, practice tracks that maybe they were just screwing around the studio with, more than the stuff that they had carefully crafted and honed. I guess you could say, in not so many metaphoric senses, it was an album that fans didn't exactly receive as well as the albums that had preceded it. And, well, to be perfectly honest, can't hardly blame the band, considering they had just been coming off of Seventh Son. Of course, I'm going on about an album that isn't the one that we're talking about in this video, which is Fear of the Dark. Now, an interesting thing about Fear of the Dark is, of course, the fact that it's the last album of the Bruce Dickinson's first era here with Iron Maiden. After this, he decided, along with one guitarist, to pursue a solo career, which, of course, led to many, many great solo records. But, of course, both members would later return later on toward the turn of the new millennium. Now, Fear of the Dark is another album that's sort of lamented a lot by fans and kind of bashed a lot. It's the first, or really the second, should I say, with No Prayer for the Dying being the other disc in the band's career that really has failed to chart on a lot of best of that year lists on various websites. And you can kind of see why. I mean, it really followed the progression that No Prayer for the Dying had sort of sowed the seeds of. You can sort of see a little bit of inner turmoil going on within the band. You can definitely see the band kind of wanting to go a couple of different directions. Bruce wanting to do his own solo ideal thing, and the band just sort of not knowing where to go with it. But to be fair, this is an album that actually does contain a lot of good songs. Be Quick or Be Dead is actually a song that's on the Ed Hunter disc, which is among the top 20 songs that were chosen by the fans. But it also does contain Afraid to Shoot Strangers, which is a really good track as well. Childhood's End is fairly decent. Wasting Love, I actually love that track. Same with The Apparition, which really sounds very out of character for them and really for me, but something about that track I just really like. And then, of course, the title track, Fear of the Dark. Fear of the Dark is, of course, a mainstay in the Iron Maiden set list even to this day. In fact, I would have to ask my best friend, my cohort in crime over on the Delinquents Wrestling broadcast, whether they performed Fear of the Dark on their most recent world tour that I unfortunately had to miss. However, as you can see from the tone of my voice, that information was not available for me at time of this recording. I'll follow up, though. Don't worry. Fear of the Dark will kind of eternally have this particular sense to it where it was the album that was almost like a farewell. Bruce Dickinson, of course, as I mentioned earlier, split off to do his own solo recordings. He had actually already put out a solo record by this point. However, after the Fear of the Dark album and subsequent tour, the band now had to search for a new vocalist, a replacement for Bruce, which seemed to be one of the most difficult tasks imaginable, really, to say. It's very difficult to take a landmark vocalist such as Bruce Dickinson that really became a real staple of the band, something that really many of the fans identified the band with, and immediately replace him with somebody that not only is on par with him, but can somehow write alongside and rank alongside him in the department of greatness. Now, who exactly was this man? This man, of course, is somebody that is often much maligned in Maiden lore, but is actually, well, there's really not a very good reason why he should be much maligned. But what can I say? I'm actually foreshadowing the next video. whenever I should be talking about Fear of the Dark a little bit further. The only thing that I really have left to say about this disc is that it's an extremely varied affair. This is definitely not Iron Maiden's worst disc by any realm imaginable, however, it's extremely close. It just seems a little bit like it was rushed, which it really wasn't. It actually is one of the few Maiden discs that I would actually put the tag on that it just seems a little too long, like they threw a little too much on there. Like, too many items, too many songs, too many ideas, made the cut, when in reality maybe a couple of them should have been honed a little bit more. Either that or perhaps left as B-sides for a single release or something of that magnitude. Be that as it may, however, Fear of the Dark was released as is. Still, I would say about a 7 out of 10, maybe 6.75 as being a little too cruel. However, this is a disc that's it's one that's good to listen to every so often and kind of revisit. It's a CD definitely where you want to revisit certain songs over and over again, but the whole entire experience as a whole is somewhat tainted, it seems. So, as a whole, we're now 2 out of 2 for the past 2 albums that have really kind of fit this particular bill, and it seems as the band was kind of going on a little bit of a downward spiral, so to speak. So far, the 1990s hadn't exactly been any good for Iron Maiden, and a lot of people will say that it got a lot worse, but stay tuned. Stay tuned.